Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in. Good evening, wherever you are in the world. Good afternoon and good morning. Okay, so like I said, we'll be continuing from where we stopped last week. It promises to be an insightful session. So I want you to sit back, relax, and of course, learn. So, what are we looking at today? We are looking at capital expenditure, aka CAPEX, and operational expenditure, aka OPEX. So these concepts are actually important for your cloud journey. You're looking at becoming a Microsoft 365 cloud specialist. So you should be able to understand and know when to apply these concepts. Okay? So let's start from the very beginning, which is capital expenditure. It is the upfront spending of money on physical infrastructure. So simply put, the money you pay for acquiring any physical infrastructure, for example, the data center building we talked about, the computing services like compute, storage, networking, and all of that. The upfront payment you use in purchasing that for your private cloud is actually called capital expenditure. It's not just for cloud computing alone, but in life in general. Anything you pay upfront for that has to do with physical infrastructure is actually called capital expenditure. And the thing with capital expenditure is that the value reduces over time due to wear and tear. Nobody wants to be a second hand or purchase a second hand at a first hand value. So if I buy a shoe, if I buy a computer, for example, worth 500,000 naira, if I am going to sell it back to you after 2 or 3 years, you will not want to purchase it at my first upfront cost of 500,000 naira. You want to buy it from me for something cheaper. And why is it so? Because you feel the value has reduced over time. That's what we call second hand. So you could purchase it for 300,000. So that's the problem with capital expenditure. So now let's go back to the second one, or let's go further to the second one, which is called operational expenditure. So unlike capital expenditure, where you're making upfront payment for physical infrastructure, you are spending on products and services as needed. Okay? So remember, we talked about private cloud and we talked about public cloud. So with these two explanations, you should know where which one falls under. So for capital expenditure, it's looking more streamlined to your private cloud. And for the operational expenditure, it's streamlined to your what? Public cloud. So as a cloud engineer, you should be able to understand the differences between this and where to apply them. So for operational expenditure, you get billed immediately, just like your DSTV subscription, your mobile data subscription, and as well as your cloud subscription. For example, Azure, Microsoft Azure, AWS, or Google Cloud subscription. So you pay as you use. So looking at the two, for capital expenditure, like we explained, it wears out over time and the value reduces. But for operational expenditure, it is as new as you use. So if you decide to use a brand new virtual machine today and use another brand new virtual machine tomorrow and use another brand new virtual machine next tomorrow, it's all up to you because you are paying as you use. Okay? So this is a very simple concept, yet very valuable to our experience. So take note of it. So we're looking at consumption-based model. Remember, we said public cloud is pay as you go, which is actually what you get to see with popular cloud providers. So cloud services are actually, on this model called consumption-based model. So your cloud service provider operates on a consumption-based model, which means that the end user only pay for the resources that they use. Whatever they use is what they pay for. So why is this a very good model? Number one, better cost prediction. So if I know that I am going to pay as I use, let's bring it down to something very simple. For example, car rentals, you pay according to your use of the car. So if you're going to use the car for 7 days and the cost of a car is $100 per day, you can predict how much you would spend. Isn't that so? So if the cost of the car is $100 per day from the car rental dealership, you can actually do what? You can actually predict how much you're going to spend in 2 days, in a week, and in a month. So in 2 days, you'll be spending $200. In 7 days, you'll be spending how much? $700. And in a month, which is usually counted as 30 days, you should be spending up to $3,000. So it gives you transparency in predicting the cost. So that's exactly how it's done when you purchase a cloud subscription, not just on Azure Cloud, but also with your Microsoft 365 subscriptions. We are heading there very soon. So the next benefit is prices for individual resources and services are provided. So which is what I just said, transparency. You get to see how much you spend, for a subscription. For example, as a Microsoft 365 specialist, you want to use one of the subscription for a certain group of people, and you also want to use a different type of subscription for another group of people. The prices are all provided for you to see, so you can have a very good analysis based on what you want to achieve. Okay? So billing is based on actual usage. So the three actually go hand in hand with each other. So let's talk about cloud benefits. The reason why people go for cloud. Number one, high availability. This is an interview question, mind you. You should be able to understand, like we started from CAPEX and OPEX. All those are interview questions. And now we are in cloud benefits. You should be able to understand the benefits, okay? You should know them and you should be able to explain them. So high availability. So with the cloud, you are given an SLA because it's no longer within your reach to manage the infrastructure, right? The hassle of managing your infrastructure, like your servers, your compute network, it's all in the court of the cloud provider. So they give you what they call a service level agreement for any of the services that you use. Okay? So for example, if you purchase a server, they could give you up to 99.9 or 99.999, depending on the kind of service that you have procured from them. So it gives you the benefits of having your services highly available. Okay? Because now the cost of electricity, cooling system, security, even manpower has been taken off you and it's been handled by them. Elasticity. So you can always go ahead to do what? You can scale in and scale out and scale up and down. We talked about this in our last class. Elasticity and scalability, these are actually what you get when you use your cloud services. So even in the price, right? So you can predict the price, the pricing, you can predict the sizes of everything that you would use at any point in time, because they are all programmed to work in an automated format depending on how you want to administer them. Okay, so elasticity and scalability work hand in hand if you are using any of the cloud resources. So you can decide on how much you want to use, how much of the resources that you would want to use. Okay, so reliability. The cloud is reliable, like I said. They give you a certain assurance that, hey, you can rely on us. We have everything in place for your services to thrive. Okay, so we have a dedicated team that is manning or that is administering to the services that you use in the cloud. So you don't need to bother yourself and say, oh, this cloud providers, I cannot put in some of my services in there and expect, at least 99.99 achievable results. So they are telling you, just as we can make your services always available for those that use websites or those that have websites. Have you ever thought of the fact whereby you go to Jumia.com? I love using Jumia because we all know what Jumia is. Or an e-commerce site. An e-commerce site is down. So what exactly will you say if the e-commerce site is down? For example, you go right away, you want to purchase an iPhone 12 and you go right away and type jumia.com and it says site is unavailable. So it means what? Number one, high availability from wherever Jumia is procuring their cloud services from is not there. Reliability, you cannot rely on the services of jumia.com, and jumia.com cannot also rely on the services of the cloud provider because today they are on, tomorrow they are off. So cloud services, when you use cloud services like Microsoft Azure, AWS, and all of that, they get to tell you that you can trust them. Okay, so they are trustworthy. Over time, for as many of us that have used it, you can actually see that the cloud is reliable because it's no longer in your court to manage and maintain the services. So predictability, we talked about this earlier, because of the transparency, the cost and everything is actually out there for you to see, right? So no one is cheating anyone. You can predict the future, how much of the services that you are going to use. You as a Microsoft 365 consultant, you can actually predict how much your company or the company you're consulting for is going to spend using some of the Microsoft 365 services. Why? Everything is actually, made available for you to see. Security, the cloud is actually secured, and this is as a result of, the fact that they have the right security infrastructure or the adequate security infrastructure to protect your services. Okay, so it's part of the part that says they are reliable, because whatever it is that you host in the cloud is actually secured. However, it depends on how much you are willing to, procure the services for security, because you have different plans, different security plans. Okay, so if you are ready or willing to spend some money to purchase the security plans that a cloud provider can, offer you, then you can actually say that the cloud has security. Okay, governance. So it comes when it comes to governance, you're talking about the roles and that governs your cloud infrastructure. No one can just, log into your account, without the right permissions. Okay, so with the cloud, you have what you call role-based access control, popularly known as RBAC. So there is governance in the cloud. You have the right permissions for the right tenant, the right subscription. Okay, so the cloud offers governance as well. And last but not the least, manageability. You can manage the infrastructures you have in the cloud appropriately because the ton of work has been moved to the cloud provider to handle for you. So all you just need to do is to manage your infrastructure. Let's streamline it to Microsoft 365. You can manage your subscriptions properly. You can manage, if you are the one managing for other companies, you can also manage for other companies as well. There are softwares or there are applications that the cloud providers put together to help you manage the infrastructure that you have or the services that you have running in the cloud. So, which brings us to the next most important thing, which is where we are headed. So we have our cloud services. It's actually called cloud delivery services. So we have different type of cloud delivery services. We have the infrastructure as a service, popularly known as IaaS and pronounced as IaaS. Okay, so for this delivery service, it has to do with the underlying infrastructure. So when you talk about infrastructure as a service scope or as a service delivery, you are talking about the cloud provider providing you with the underlying infrastructure, like I said, example, the virtual machines, which is a compute, the building, the data center building, the networking and firewall. All these are what? They are tangible resources that you can actually touch. So they are the underlying infrastructure. So when you hear that word, infrastructure as a service, as long as cloud computing is concerned, it's talking about the base, the underlying infrastructure or the fundamental infrastructures. An example is what? The server, which is actually known as the compute, aka the virtual machines, right? The storage, networking, firewall, security, the data center, physical building, and every other thing you have inside. So you have people who are specialized in this area of cloud computing, right? And they are usually called cloud infrastructure engineers. So their work is to administer solutions for companies within these areas. So they can help you build solutions, provide the right servers that you need, configure the servers to meet your requirement, network the servers together, put in firewall and security. That's, of course, firewall is a security. So put in the basic security that you would need. And if it's a private cloud, they can help you get a building, your computer room or your data center and properly, put all of these together. Okay. So that is for an infrastructure engineer as well as a cloud infrastructure engineer. The difference between an infrastructure engineer and a cloud infrastructure engineer is that the cloud infrastructure engineer deals with only cloud computing, in the sense that they cannot touch this the servers physically because it's hosted in a remote location, and they are just within this level of cloud services, which is the compute, the networking, and the data center of physical plants. That has to do with people who want to physically, provide this building like a private cloud for you. Okay, so this is what you call infrastructure as a service. So in the cloud, this delivery service is focused on what I have just mentioned earlier. Then the next one is called platform as a service. So platform as a service, popularly known as PaaS or pronounced as PaaS, they provide an environment for the building, testing, and deploying of software application without focusing on managing underlying infrastructure. So this is a level ahead of the infrastructure people. Okay, so the infrastructure services you have in the cloud entails what? The compute, the network, security, and storage. Now, on top of this compute, on top of the network, storage, and all of that, there is an environment. Okay, there is an environment that is provided for you. So let me give you an example. An analogy, for example, you have people who build houses. Okay, so that infrastructure that they have built for you is called infrastructure as a service. Now you have people who work on the designing, the aesthetics of the building, just to make the building look good. They provide a beautiful environment, okay, for people to actually live in, without the furnitures. So they go ahead to make the building look beautiful. Give the building the right color of painting, put in the electricity and every other thing that you would need, right? So I'm just using this in a layman example. Okay, so they paint the building, they put in some of the things that you would require, way beyond electricity, because let's say the electrical part now is also part of the infrastructure. Okay, because you need to do the wiring, right? So that's part of the infrastructure. But now the light bulbs, after you put in electricity, you also need to put in light bulbs, you need to put in fan, and all of that. That is an environment, okay, for the building. So that can be likened to be platform as a service. So bringing it in a more technical term, if you are to host a website, for example, you have the server that is going to host the website. So that server that is going to host the website is the infrastructure. Okay, so there are some applications you need to install into that server to make your applications run smoothly. For example, we have the web applications like XAMPP and WAMP. For those who are into web applications, you would understand what I'm talking about. But for those who are not really into, website development, don't bother your head too much. Just understand it this way, that the platform as a service provides the right environment for the finished product to thrive. Okay, the finished product is your furnitures, your everything, the bed, the chairs, the everything that you have in the building, right? That's the finished product. Okay. So for you to have all this bed and enjoy the environment of that building, you need to have light bulbs, you need to have fans, you need to have all sorts of, aesthetics, right? So that is exactly what platform as a service is. But in a technical term, you need to have some applications that should be running so that your final product can lie on those applications and thrive. And in a web developer's world, the applications are like your WAMP and XAMPP. Okay, so that is platform as a service. And we have people who actually work in these areas, and they are called platform engineers. Okay, so they provide the environment for building, testing, and deploying software applications without focusing on what? The server, because someone has provided the server. In this case, the someone is the cloud provider. The cloud provider has provided the what? The infrastructure. So he has provided the service called what? Infrastructure as a service. Now, if you want the cloud provider to also provide the environment for you to be able to host your application, what the cloud provider has done for you is called what? Platform as a service. Okay, so which leads us to the last but not the least, and it's taking us to where we are going to in this course. Is called what? Software as a service. So users connect to and use cloud-based apps over the internet. Example, Microsoft Office 365, emails, and calendar. So in a simpler term, software as a service is the finished product, okay, that you have to access over the internet. Now, Microsoft 365 is a finished product, okay? Microsoft has provided the servers, which is the infrastructure as a service. They've provided the environment as well, and they have provided the entire application. So now Microsoft 365 is known as software as a service. This is the arm of cloud computing, Microsoft 365, just as your email and calendars are actually under. An example outside the scope of Microsoft 365, you have softwares like Zoom, you have softwares like HubSpot, you have different kind of finished products, SailPoint. You have, I can mention a whole lot of them, right? They are all packaged and finished, so all you just need to do is to sign up with them. And that is all. You are not installing anything extra except you in the areas of, or in the focus of, if you're focusing on extensions. Okay, so Microsoft 365 is your final building. All that the architecture is telling you to do now is pack your load and get into the house. Everything is actually made available for you. Okay, you don't need to bring in carpenters anymore. You don't need to bring in plumbers anymore. Everything has been done. The building itself is actually done. The environment for you to be able to enjoy the building is actually fixed. The chairs, the final finishing, the chairs, the beds, and every other thing that you need to live in a house, the pots, the spoons, they have been made available. So all you just need to do is what? Back in. So just like a service apartment, software as a service is the finished product. Okay. However, it is cloud based. So an example is your Microsoft 365 application. I hope we understand. If you do not understand, please feel free to drop your questions. I will always be there to, answer them. But now you know where we are headed. So the arm of cloud computing Microsoft 365 is what? Software as a service. It is the finished product that you get, the entire application. All you just need to do is to sign up with them, purchase a subscription, and you are using it without bothering about which server is hosting what and all of that. Okay? Yes. So before we call it a day, I would like to just briefly touch on shared responsibility model for cloud computing so that you will understand. Okay? So, what is the shared responsibility model? So, if you are thinking about using any of the cloud service delivery offerings, you should know your part. You should know what the cloud provider can offer you, and you should know your own responsibility. So, it's a shared responsibility. Okay, so you can see the legend below. You can use the legends to mark what is here. All right. So let us go on. Well, the first one is the on-prem. On-prem is a short word for on-premise, meaning in your own building, in your own space. Okay, so it is in your own physical allocation. Okay, just like your private cloud. All right, that is what on-premise mean. And if you are bringing your own physical private cloud, it means that the cloud provider has nothing to do with any of what you have in your own physical location. So, as you can see, this is deep blue. The on-premise is solely administered by the owner of the company. What I mean by, I don't mean the owner of the company. I mean the people who work there, as well as the owner of the company. They are responsible for whatever is in their own private cloud or data center, right? So this has nothing to do with cloud providers like Azure and all that. You are responsible from top to bottom. So let's move to IaaS, infrastructure as a service. So where is the cloud provider responsible for? The cloud provider is responsible for the physical host, right? The physical host meaning your virtual machines, the physical network, right? So what does that mean? It means the network that Microsoft is going to provide for you. It is physical to Microsoft, but it is remote to you because you are in your country and the data center is where Microsoft have dedicated for it. So it is physical to Microsoft. It's something they can touch and feel, but it is remote to you. You can only access those resources over the portal we looked at in our last class. Okay? So this is what Microsoft can actually handle. Just the virtual machines, the network, and the building itself. Okay? That is for infrastructure as a service. The operating system, the networks, the application, and all of that is for you as the customer. So you get to, you're responsible for the above. So what next do we have? Is who can remember what PaaS means? Platform as a service, correct. So let's see the shared responsibilities. You see the one that has a diagonal of light blue and deep blue. It means that the customer has its own side and Microsoft has its own side. Both of them are responsible for that particular aspect. So in platform as a service, Microsoft is responsible for the operating system, the physical host, the physical network, and the physical data center. Remember, the operating system, which is the what? Which is the environment. The operating system we are talking about now is not Windows 10, Windows Server 2019. No, all of these are included in infrastructure as a service. That is Windows 10. They all come with a host, with a physical host, except you want to go for something called bare metal that doesn't have anything inside. So the operating system you are seeing there is the operating system that will help drive your what? Your application. So for example, we mentioned WAMP and XAMPP, and there are other applications there, but I don't want to confuse us here, and that's why I'm mentioning that. So where you see operating system, it's not necessarily your Windows 10, Windows Server 2019, Windows 11. All of those have already been provided for you within the physical host. So the next one is the network controls, right? The network controls under PaaS, platform as a service, it's a shared responsibility between who? Microsoft and the customer. Same with the application. Now, the customer brings the application. Microsoft is only responsible for creating the environment that makes the application thrive. So if there's any other thing Microsoft can do to provide an environment, if it's an application they need to provide for you, they will provide for you. However, the sole responsibility for the platform is on the customer. So it's a shared responsibility. Microsoft has its own side to offer and the customer does have its own side. Same with identities and directories in the infrastructure. You have your own side for identity, and Microsoft, they also have their own side for directory infrastructure as well. Then for platform as a service, accounts and identities. This account and identity is different from this identity. This account is talking about the user account and all of that. You as a customer, you are responsible for the user account. Microsoft is not going to come and start creating, accounts for you. Okay. Devices and which has to do with mobile and PCs. Now, this mobile and PC you're seeing here is the physical one. It's not the one that is in Microsoft environment. It's the one that you are using to access the services, right? Remember in our last class, we talked about using your physical device to access what? Various infrastructure in the cloud. Okay? You can use one physical device to access 7 virtual machines, hundreds of storage accounts and all of that. So this device here is talking about the physical one that you will use to access all of these over the internet or over a private connection. Okay? So that is your responsibility. And information and data is also your responsibility. You have to be guided. You are the one bringing in your files. You are the one bringing in your media, whatever it is that you're bringing into the cloud. It's your sole responsibility. Microsoft is not going to generate all of that for you. So for platform as a service, you can see the shared responsibility differs from what? From software as a service, which is our sole interest. Applications like what? Microsoft 365. So for software as a service, you have identity and directories as a shared responsibility. The application itself is brought to what? Brought to you by whom? By Microsoft. For example, Microsoft 365 was built by Microsoft software engineers. They put everything together in the application and they provided it for you. So they are responsible for that application, for maintaining everything that has to do with what? Microsoft 365 application in the application and infrastructure level. Identity and directory infrastructure, just like your platform as a service, it is both shared. They are both shared responsibilities, and just like platform as a service, the accounts, the devices, and the information and data, they are the customer's shared responsibility. So you see that even in a cloud environment, there is what you call shared responsibility, except you are going fully on a private cloud, which is an on-prem or on-premise infrastructure, whereby it doesn't have anything to do with the cloud provider. You are responsible from top to bottom, you know, over everything. Okay. So we call it a day today in today's class. In our next class, we can go over to subscription types. Okay, so we are gradually migrating into our core course, and we are gradually migrating into our labs. Please and please take your time, understand the differences between your cloud services. Okay, so remember, you have your infrastructure as a service, your platform as a service, and your software as a service. Understand the difference between them. Like we can see over here in the cloud service comparison, for the IaaS, it is very flexible. Okay, it's a very flexible offering because you as a customer, you have a whole lot to play for the IaaS, because the cloud provider is only providing what? Providing the underlying infrastructure for you. For PaaS, you as the customer, you are focused only on your application. The environment and the underlying infrastructure has been provided for you by the cloud provider. So you focus solely on the infrastructure. And as for SaaS, which is a finished product, it's like I've cooked food, your favorite jollof rice or beans and whatever, and I'm serving it to you. All you just need to do is to pay for the amount of food you want and you eat. Okay, you don't have any stress in using the infrastructure. It's a finished product like your Microsoft 365. For your infrastructure as a service, you configure and manage the hardware for your application. Just like I said, you have a lot to do there because you are now going to configure every other thing aside the underlying infrastructure. Okay, so after Microsoft has provided you with Windows Server 2019 or Windows 11, whatever it is that you want to do with this infrastructure, it is up to you. You are solely responsible for the configuration. Then for platform management, it is handled by what? The cloud provider. Okay, so they have provided the environment for you. So all you just need to do is put in the code, put in your application code and run it. Okay, and then for software as a service, users pay for the software they use on a subscription model. So we've talked about all of these over and over again. This should be resounding in your ear by now. You should be an expert when it has to do with what? Cloud service deliveries, just like your cloud computing models. All right. So thank you so very much for watching. Like I said, we are gradually migrating to where we should be. And all of these concepts, they are very good and important for your well-being, for your cloud adoption journey, so that by the time you are with an interviewer and they ask you what is IaaS or IaaS, you would know what to say. Or what are the cloud computing models? You should know what to say, okay? All right. So thank you so much for watching. Do have a lovely day. Bye. Take care.